All right, people. Midweek report time. So, lot to get into, lot to discuss. Before I get into it, obviously, I have a film study video on Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois, which is actually doing pretty well so far. Anyway, I think that's one of those videos that will carry on with age. There's some boxing videos. You do a post-fight review, you're unlikely. Whatever you get in the first 48 hours is probably the lifespan of the video. So this one I think has a lot more legs, hopefully anyway. And yeah, it's on screen there. Have a look. Got some film footage in there, got a couple of rounds in there. So I think it's a particularly good video if I do say so myself, but I would say that. But genuinely, I do think it's a particularly good video. In terms of what's next for Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, oh boy, bye. This don't sound too good. So, Eddie Hearn has revealed that Turki Al-Sheikh has told him he wants to make the Daniel Dubois versus Anthony Joshua rematch next Tornado, that both Joshua and Dubois want the rematch to take place. Well, I can understand why Dubois wants it to take place. He get even more money this time around. He knocked the guy out spectacularly in 5 rounds, in which he had no real trouble other than being buzzed slightly. And him being buzzed led to Joshua overcommitting and leading with an uppercut, and he got taken out. So I'm sure Dubois is probably thinking, keep those checks coming, make it rain again, even more this time, and he'll fancy his chances even more in the rematch if it happens, because he's already beaten him. He knows now, not only can he beat him, but he can hurt him pretty damn easily. So I really, for Dubois, it's a no-brainer. Makes sense. I mean, it's something to tick over while you're waiting for the winner of Fury Usyk. So yeah, I mean, for Dubois, it makes sense. For Joshua, I just, like, in one sense, you're kind of like, yeah, maybe in the sense of, right, at top level, where are you going to go? Where are you going to go? Where are you going to get this type of money? You've one fight left with Riyadh season. Where are you going to go at the top level? Turki Al-Sheikh is not going to pay you for comeback fights against whoever, Robert Helenius, or, I know he's already fought, that type of opponent. So in one sense, you look at it and you kind of think, maybe, and then if he loses again, which I think most likely would, then you kind of can have a grandstand finish against, a Dylan White or someone like that to end it all, that sort of way. But, like, I don't know. That's what Eddie Hearn is saying. Now Turki Al-Sheikh is the sort of guy where he does tend to make these kind of very, I'd say he's someone who is very spur of the moment. And because when he says he wants this particular fight, that particular fight, it tends to get made. You also have to remember, how many fights has he talked about that haven't got made? He was talking about Fury Usyk straight after Joshua versus Ngannou. He was talking about adding Deontay Wilder to the American show, the Crawford Majimov show, to fight Jared Anderson. Bear in mind, Deontay Wilder hadn't even fought, they hadn't even done the Matchroom Queensbury show yet, where he was fighting Zhilei Zhang. So he does have a tendency to make these kind of snap, I want to do this fight, I want to do that fight. In reality, I think he says it's spur of the moment, and then, you let a bit of the dust settle, you see what happens, what the landscape looks like, and then something changes. With this one, I wonder, is that the kind of same thing, where he's saying, let's do this fight, and then you kind of realize, you're like, hang on a minute, like, realistically, the probably biggest fight for Anthony Joshua that would make him the most money that he has a chance of winning is probably waiting to see what happens in the Fury Usyk fight. If Fury wins, give it a go. You never know, coming off a loss, but if he loses, then that's a winnable fight. Depending on the manner of which he loses, if he gets completely ironed out by Usyk, you might fancy Anthony Joshua, because he is still the fresher of the two in terms of he hasn't abused his body the way Tyson Fury has. So you might still favour him. And then you might be able to milk a payday or two after that. Maybe that's the best route to go down. If he goes in there against Dubois and he gets, blown out of the water again, which is ever more likely that it will happen. People would say, but Joshua will learn from those mistakes. See, if Anthony Joshua was in his late 20s, maybe 30, 31, I might say, yeah, possibly he could learn from them and, could change things up. He might need to look at the team and then look at the guys around him and say, all right, did they give me the best advice? Yeah, maybe. But he's 30, well, his nearest makes no difference. He's 35 years old. And a beating like that for an aging fighter, and people say, well, it wasn't that. No, people trying to kind of make out as though, well, apart from the knockdowns, it was a competitive fight. It wasn't. It really wasn't. Or there was no point where you looked and thought, okay, even the first round, people say, before the knockdown, who was buzzed in that round. It wasn't Dubois. Like, Joshua was buzzed early in that fight and he was taking big jabs. I mean, honestly, like, it's crazy to me that people are like, oh, well, apart from Joshua getting caught, it was fine. No, it wasn't fine. He was taking a beating in there. And that's the kind of fight that will age an aged fighter even more. So I just think if he goes in there against Dubois, I just think the damage is done. And if he goes in again and he gets ironed out again, even more brutally and even quicker this time, I mean, really, what do you do? What do you do with him? I don't know. I really, really, really don't know. That is the situation with Anthony Joshua. So, should we get to the press conference? And, when I did the video on Eubank Jr. press conference yesterday, Frank Warren, the statements hadn't been released. That Eubank press conference, the clip has gone somewhat viral of Eubank Jr. He's not really cursing out anybody, but he's going in and having a go at Frank Warren, Kellis Sowell and Eddie Hearn, the three big UK promoters, call Frank Warren a scumbag, and Frank Warren was the only one who really bit. Eddie Hearn and Kellis Sowell didn't say anything, but they didn't look too pleased, to say the least. But Frank Warren is, as I said, he is a man who, if you say something, especially if he's in your presence when you say it, he'll bite. He is not just going to sit there with a straight face and just say, oh, yeah, you say what you want, you're an idiot. He's just going to go straight for the jugular and go in as well. And Frank Warren, as soon as Eubank said it, speak up. Why didn't you fight Hamza Shiraz and stuff like that? Eddie Hearn, he was saying that what was it he said about Eddie Hearn? It was basically the Conor Benn fight. That was what he was mainly alluding to, but it might have been something else as well, I'm not sure. Saying about Kellis Sowell and signing them to a really bad deal. And Frank Warren, suing him for a couple of $100,000 a couple of years ago, stuff like that. So yeah, he's not best pleased with either of them. And of course, Ben Shalom, he's okay. That's very generous. Ben Shalom, he's just okay. I mean, he's not even fought with Ben Shalom and he's saying Ben Shalom is only okay. Brilliant. It's a glowing review for Ben Shalom. I mean, if you want someone to sell Ben Shalom as a promoter, there you go. Ben Shalom is just okay. Brilliant. But no, he says Turki Al-Sheikh is the man. He is the best. He's the one who cares about the fighters and stuff like that. And Turki Al-Sheikh, we don't know. We haven't, the only time we've seen him really at odds with a fighter is Canelo Alvarez and Tim Tszyu to an extent. Tim Tszyu was originally going to fight on one of his shows. He didn't in the end because of obviously damage he received in his previous fight, cuts. But the only time he's ever really gone back with a fighter is Canelo, and Canelo is a different kind of situation altogether. I mean, Canelo is a brand, really. I mean, he can do whatever he likes. He can call the shots. He doesn't want someone calling the shots, and the most promoters will let him do that. Turkey didn't seem like he wanted to, and there was that. You never know what might happen in the future, but that's the only time I can think of it. And saying that again, Canelo's not fighting on any of Turkey shows, so in terms of fighters who fought on Turki Al-Sheikh shows, no one seems to be having one single bad word to say about him. And Turkey is, I don't think he's exclusively boxing. I mean, you see those Riyadh seasons, it's not just boxing. They've got WWE, they have other things going on there, so I'm sure he's involved in all of that, not just primarily boxing. So they all seem happy with it. So there's that. In terms of what Eubank said, listen, boxing promoters are a different breed. And you go out throughout the course of history and, you'll see that, you go way back in the days and you'll see boxing promoters are not the sort of people you want to be, don't think they're your friend. That's probably the best way to describe it. But Eubank really went in on Frank Warren, and Frank Warren went on to say he was sued by me for illegal breach of the contract. I was successful in suing him and substantial damages regarding what he just said. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. He's going to get sued again. And Chris Eubank Jr., I mean, he's straight away, him and Frank Warren both were straight on those statements. He says, following the press conference for the historic Riyadh season event on October 12, I would like to retract my inaccurate statement and offer my apologies to Frank Warren, Eddie Hearn and Kellis Sowell. I now wish to focus purely on boxing and preparing for a huge fight in Riyadh next month. Frank went on to say, I accept Chris's apology and retraction. I too have said things before and apologise to him. Also, if any criticism of him has upset him in the past, I look forward to seeing him compete on this huge Riyadh season card. We look forward ahead to some potentially massive fights in the future. So both guys kissed and made up. That's probably the best way to say it. And then they got in a picture with with Ben Shalom. When Ben Shalom was in it, I was just noticing George Warren was there in place of Eddie Hearn. I was like, that Eddie Hearn, and I was like, no, that's George Warren. Again, next to Spencer Brown. I was kind of looking and thinking, like, that does not look like Eddie Hearn. No, it's George Warren who's there. They're all there with Turki Al-Sheikh. I would imagine he went and said, lads, behave, and that was the end of that. Literally, that was probably the end of that. But Eubank's outburst, it's got people talking, to say the least. It's got people talking. And I've always said with Eubank, and I guess you could say some people respect it in a way, like that Eubank senior and junior, they've burned bridges with every promoter except Ben Shalom, but he's not fought with him yet, so there is still plenty of time. He's burnt bridges with pretty much every promoter he's worked with, because I think with Eubank Senior, he's been there, seen it and done it, and he's been in there in the 90s, which was even worse for things going on with promoters than now. At the time you had Frank Warren, who was the main kind of guy in the UK, and he was Don King's business partner in the UK. Don King, there you go. Which just, do you know what you could say? Because I've said it to, in my job as well, people who will know nothing about boxing. You mentioned Don King, they know who that is, and they know that he's not a good man. So there you go. That just says it all about Don King. Chris Eubank Senior's been there, seen it and done it, and obviously doesn't want it for his son, even though his son is now 35 years old. But Junior, I would imagine, he's just called him Junior. Junior, I would imagine, has seen what his dad had to go through with some promoters and stuff like that, or maybe just seeing what they were like back then. Is like, no, I'm going to be the man. I'm not going to let a promoter dictate to me. So he has burnt bridges with them all. Seems now Turki Al-Sheikh is kind of the mediator in between. He mediates in between all these, and it seems to work. There's so much money on the table. I don't think any of these guys really want to be having any issues. But the press conference as a whole, let's talk about that. It was for, I just have to smile when I say it, because this year alone we have had Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Joshua-Dubois. Look, the Joshua Ngannou fight itself was what it was a gimmick, but the actual card itself was all right. We've had, I think I already said, Joshua-Dubois, we've had Crawford Magomedov, and now we are getting, if you had said to me you can have one or the other but not both, Fury versus Usyk or Beterbiev Bivol, I'd be like, don't know. I don't know which one I'd rather. I'm getting both in a year. How flipping great is that? It's brilliant. I love it. It's a great card. It's a great fight. I'm so happy we're getting it. And I have to say, the trailer, I've always said about these Riyadh seasons, just the trailers are amazing. I love them. My favourite trailer was the 5v5. That was my favourite. I loved it. Now, they did the 5v5, the Beterbiev Bivol, originally back in April 15th, I think it was thereabouts. They did those press conferences separately. It was on a Monday. It was amazing being there. I can't emphasize it enough how brilliant it was being at it. It was epic. It really was. It was epic. But they did them both separately. So they did the Beterbiev Bivol one, and then they did the Matchroom Queensbury. I think they did Matchroom Queensbury 1 second, if my memory is right. And you could tell by just looking at the visuals that you were like, all right, they're going with the Viking settings for this one, so it looks good, and they're wearing the wintry gear, so you can tell the setting that they're going for this. But obviously the fight got pushed back, so we didn't get a chance to see it. And I was there when they did the reveal for the promo for the 5v5, and I loved it. I thought it was epic. I thought it was mega. And I thought, for me, that's my favourite. The Joshua-Dubois one didn't match it, nor did the Fury. They were very good, but they didn't match it. I loved the 5v5 one. I thought that was the best. Until I seen this one. I love the Viking style. I love the narrator. I thought it was flipping this right here. This did it. This was the one. It's gonna. The weird thing is, I'm sure they will beat this in terms of promos, which shows. I'd love to know how much they're paying for these promos. I genuinely they must be. Those promos are not cheap. No way. They are serious money they are paying for them. And I think, I'm already invested in this fight regardless of a promo, but if you need it anymore, then I'm in. And by the way, just so you know, you can buy this fight. And if you like, when I say the original promo, the original poster, it's on screen just there. You can buy this fight in the zone using my G-Man link, which will be pinned in the comment section and the description below. 7-day free trial for the zone, and we've got some good shows upcoming over the next couple of months as well. So the zone is the place to be for boxing. It's as simple as that. Link is in the description below. In terms of the fight itself, I'm not going to give a prediction just yet. I'm really going back and forth on that fight because I don't want to go in depth in it. I want to kind of save that for some more videos closer to the time. But it's a tricky one for me because the Turbiev is that fighter. And he's more active this year. I mean, this will be his second fight this year, which by his standards is very, very good. It's just those injuries. But then Bivol, you're just like, I don't know. I love it. I think it's going to be an epic fight. And, Anthony Joshua, just in the fallout, I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but in the fallout of his loss, guess who's called him out? Dylan White has, yeah, and other heavyweights. Didn't expect Edgar Berlanga to call Anthony Joshua out for a fight. I would love to go up to heavyweight and fight Anthony Joshua to test greatness. Nothing bad towards a walk around in the ring 210. You weighed 193 next day out for your Canelo fight, which is a massive man. I mean, you're cruiserweight in the ring. You really are massive, but I mean, mate, weight divisions are there for a reason. Man, you were dropped by a non-punching middleweight. Marcelo Carcasses, I think is how you say. That's a non-punching middleweight. You were dropped by him. Mate, seriously, think of your health there. I'm just going to say it there. Think of your health there. Dave Morrell and Dave Benavidez were posted on Instagram today, and it kind of made you believe it. I've seen a few articles and people were like, "Oh, are we going to get this fight? Are we going to get Dave Morrell versus Benavidez? I'd love it. Are we going to get it?" No. Told by Dave Benavidez that reports about a potential fight with him and Dave Morrell are not true. He'll be fighting Jesse Hart in December. Jesse Hart is not a terrible fighter, to be fair. He's not. He had some close run-ins with Gilberto Ramirez back in the day. He had a fight with Joe Smith Jr. back in 2020, I think it was, where they tried to rob Joe Smith Jr. because Jesse Hart got the crap beaten out of him in that fight, but somehow one judge scored it for him. Jesse Hart, heart in the name. He's always had heart in terms of he won't quit, but I've always kind of been a bit questionable about him in terms of his... I think against Zurdo, in the first fight, certainly he hurt Zurdo pretty bad in one of the later rounds. I think it was round 11. Never stepped on the gas. He could have won, but he never had the desire to grab the bull by the horn. Now, he went from light heavy to super... So he went from super middle to light heavy and back down to super middle. Now I would assume he's back at light heavy. So it's essentially two big super middleweights fighting at light heavyweight. I think that Hart is probably seen better days. I mean, the Zurdo fight was, 2018? It's a long time ago. Well, he had two fights with Zurdo, to be fair. One was in 2018, the other was in 2019, thereabouts. But again, a long time ago. So I don't envision he's going to be any better now than he certainly was then. Yunta Nakatani has welcomed the fight with Naoya Inoue's brother Takuma Inoue. This will be obviously to unify would it be? Yeah, it would be. It would make them undisputed then at bantamweight. Listen, Takuma Inoue is, I mean, if you got him off Wish, Naoya Inoue, if you got him off Wish, and I might be being generous in that sense, because I've seen Takuma Inoue is nowhere near as talented. I've seen him a few times. He's nowhere near as talented. Hard to get talented as Naoya, to be fair, but he's nowhere near. He's absolutely nowhere near. Eddie Hearn has listed 3 potential options for Anthony Joshua's next fight: the Dubois rematch, Tyson Fury, or Deontay Wilder. Maybe they could do Wilder, because although Wilder didn't take the beating Anthony Joshua took, he is way more gun... Like, Anthony Joshua doesn't appear to be gun-shy to that extent. Like, that... No. Like, he is gun-shy as hell, is Deontay Wilder. I mean, it's really sad to see, to be honest with you. Gennady Triple G Golovkin has now been appointed chair of the new Olympic Boxing Commission, the new breakaway governing body for amateur boxing. Let's hope this one isn't as bad as some of the other ones, but I'm not holding my breath there. With the aim of ensuring boxing is restored to the Olympic Games program in time for LA 2028. If you thought Paris was bad for the opening ceremony, just you wait until 2028. That's what I got to say on that one. Because if you think Paris was bad, you ain't seen nothing yet. So yeah, Triple G, I would imagine we're just waiting on the retirement for Triple G now at this stage, aren't we? We really are just waiting on the retirement for Triple G. Before we finish, let's just do a quick preview of the card that's happening this weekend in Sheffield. Originally, it was meant to be Dalton Smith headlining. Then it was moved to the Copper Box with Johnny Fisher to headline. Now it was moved back to the Sheffield Arena with Rihanna Dixon headlining against Terry Harper. Rihanna Dixon seems like a good girl. Rihanna, when I was on Instagram, I used to have a little like exchange or two, or just a little chat. We tried to arrange interviews and stuff like that. I never had the time, neither of us, to be fair. Rihanna Dixon, she seems like a cool girl, to be fair. She's in there with Terry Harper. Terry Harper, like, I remember she got beat by Elisa Baumgardner. That was a bad, bad loss. Her last fight, she lost to Sandy Ryan. She scraped through Cecilia Brakehurst. Yeah. Terry Harper is, I mean, she was the one of like Eddie Hearn's golden girls at one point with Matchroom. So she's in there. This is for Rihanna Dixon's WBO lightweight world title. Peter McGrail on the undercard in there against Brad Foster. You know, Peter McGrail on the comeback trail after that absolutely devastating knockout loss he suffered at the hands of, what was his name, Jay O'Quinn, I think that's his name, Jericho O'Quinn. Devastating knockout loss. George Lillard versus George Davey, Battle of the Georges there, well done. Galal Yafai, this is a little run out. I wouldn't imagine he's going to be in there with much, because this is a run out. And listen, when a fighter has another fight lined up and it's a headline show of a main, like it's a main event of a main show against another guy like Sonny Edwards, you best believe they are not going to feed him anybody who's going to be remotely tricky. He is going to go in there. This is just a run out for him. They're selling it as that. So that is, and then there's obviously some fighters on the undercard. I'll have a look at them, but primarily this is basically, like, when I look at this, is a glorified next gen show. Giorgio Visioni, now he is a fighter who I keep a close eye on. I've talked to Mark Tibbs about him. Mark Tibbs, he's obviously trained by Mark Tibbs. Mark Tibbs is very high on Giorgio Visioni. Says he's a big puncher. Said he actually didn't think he was a big puncher, but says no, he's got good power there. So I will be keeping a close eye on him. Like, if Mark Tibbs is giving you the big ups and Mark Tibbs is willing to train you from the start of your career, I'll take it that guy is decent, because Mark Tibbs just doesn't just train anybody. He's a very, very good trainer, a very good guy, Mark Tibbs. I have a lot of time for him, an awful lot of time for Mark Tibbs. So I'll keep a close eye on him. I did just want to talk briefly, I forgot to talk about it at the time, but I'm seeing that Chris Eubank Jr. is now being... So Chris Eubank Jr. for his last fight with Liam Smith was trained by Bomac. Alright, so Brian Bomac McIntyre. So I was thinking, okay, it looked good, seems to be a good fit for him. He's now trained by Jonathan Banks. I mean, this guy has had so many different trainers. And I thought the Bomac relationship was working. I thought you'd finally found the sweet spot there. Apparently not. Apparently he's now gone to Jonathan Banks, who was a former Kronk fighter, trained by Emmanuel Stewart. Trained Vladimir Klitschko after Manny Stewart passed away for the remainder of his career. Briefly trained Dylan White, trained Triple G for the back end of his career. He's not a name you'd really talk... You know, he's not a bad trainer, Jonathan Banks, by no stretch of the imagination. But he's not someone who fighters are in a rush to go to. But saying that there's some very good trainers out there that fighters, the praises are seldom sung. I just don't understand what the problem was with Bomac, to be honest with you. Yeah, and you can't really say it's geographical reasons, because they're both Americans. They're both American based, so I really don't know in that situation. But just to end it on that one, let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash the like button if you could. Subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. And as for now, lads and lasses, I will leave it there. I'll chat to you tomorrow. Peace.